There are moments in life when the ground beneath your feet gives way without warning. One day, everything seems to be moving in the right direction. The work is going well, the relationships feel steady, the future looks at least reasonably clear, and then something shifts. It could be a phone call you weren't expecting. It could be a medical report that changes everything in a single sentence. It could be the quiet, accumulating weight of days that feel identical and meaningless, where you wake up, go through all the motions, do all the right things, and still find yourself lying awake at night, wondering whether any of it matters. It could be the harder kind of confusion, the kind that doesn't come from one dramatic event, but from the slow erosion of certainty, the gradual realization that the life you built on a particular foundation is not as stable as you thought. And in those moments you start to ask the questions, the real ones, the ones that don't have comfortable answers. Why is this happening? What is the point of all of this? Is there a purpose to the suffering, or is it just random? Does God see this? Does He care? And if He does, why does life so often feel like it makes absolutely no sense? If you have ever been in that place, I want you to know something that I believe with everything in me. You are not alone, and you are not the first. Long before you sat with those questions, long before the language you are thinking in even existed, a man sat down with a piece of parchment and wrote them out. Not in the form of complaint, not in the form of poetry alone, and not in the form of a prayer asking for relief, but in the form of a systematic, honest, unflinching examination of human life in all of its beauty and all of its confusion. That man was Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, and the book he left us is called Ecclesiastes, and it is unlike anything else you will find in the Bible. Most of us come to the scriptures looking for encouragement. We want to be lifted up. We want promises and affirmations and reminders that God is good and that things will be okay. And those things are in the Bible, and they are true, and we need them. But Ecclesiastes does something different. It doesn't start with the answer. It starts with the ache, the very first words of the book, the words with which Solomon chose to open the whole thing, are not "God is good," or "trust in the Lord," or "take courage." The first words are these: "Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." And if your honest reaction to those words is that they sound bleak, that's a reasonable reaction. They do sound bleak, at first. But if you stay with them, if you don't flinch away from that opening and instead lean into what Solomon is actually saying, you will find that this book is not pessimistic at all. It is honest. And there is a kind of honesty that is more comforting than false cheer, more stabilizing than shallow optimism, and more life-giving than 1,000 motivational phrases, because it takes seriously the actual conditions of the life you are actually living. Solomon was not a man writing from ignorance. He was not a sheltered philosopher speculating about what suffering might feel like from a safe distance. He was a man who had been given more than almost any human being in history: more wisdom, more wealth, more power, more pleasure, more creative achievement, more influence, and who had pursued each of those things to its outer limit. He had tasted everything the world had to offer, held it up to the light, and been honest about what he found. And what he found was that all of it, disconnected from the living God, left him with an emptiness that none of it could fill. That's not defeat. That's wisdom of the highest order. And the book he left us, written under the guidance of God's Spirit, is a gift to every human being who has ever tried to make sense of the life they have been given. Over the next several minutes, we are going to walk through 40 lessons from the book of Ecclesiastes. Not 40 quick bullet points to make you feel better for a few hours. Not 40 fortune cookie insights to get you through the week. 40 deep, substantive, honest, transformative truths that have the power to completely reshape the way you see your circumstances, your struggles, your purpose, and your God. We will take each lesson seriously. We will sit with it long enough to let it do its work. And by the time we reach the 40th lesson, I believe you will not only understand Ecclesiastes better, I believe you will be more grounded than when you started. Not because life will have become simpler, but because you will have been given the tools of wisdom that keep you stable when life refuses to cooperate with your expectations. So wherever you are right now, whether you're listening while driving or sitting quietly at home, or in the middle of a season that is genuinely hard, or simply hungry for something solid in a world that keeps shifting beneath you, I want you to stay with this, stay all the way to the end, because these 40 lessons are not information to be filed away. They are truths to be lived, and they are exactly what your soul needs today. Before we go to the first lesson, I want to pause for just a moment and do something that matters a great deal to me, and that I hope matters to you too. Every time I publish a video on this channel, the comments section becomes something extraordinary. People from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from Canada, from Australia, from Nigeria and Ghana and South Africa, from Brazil and Mexico and the Philippines, from India and Indonesia and across the Middle East, from truly every corner of the world, gather in that space around the same Word of God, finding encouragement, finding connection, finding the reminder that they are not alone in what they're carrying. That never stops moving me. It is one of the most beautiful things I have ever been part of, so I would genuinely love to know where you are watching from today. Drop it in the comments, your city, your country, even just a flag. Let's watch this community reveal itself, because I believe it is far bigger, far more global, and far more beautiful than any of us fully realizes until we see it written out beneath the video. And if this channel has been a source of nourishment for you, if you find yourself coming back here because something in these studies speaks to the part of you that is hungry for more than surface-level spirituality, I want to ask you, from the heart, to please subscribe if you haven't already done so. I want to be sincere with you about this. Every subscriber represents a real person who has decided that this content is worth making space for in their life. That means the world to me. I don't take your attention lightly. Every single video on this channel is made with prayer, with real care, with a genuine desire to bring you closer to God's Word and to help you live in its truth. If this is a channel you want to keep coming back to, subscribing is the single most important thing you can do to make sure you never miss what we release. Please, subscribe. It costs you nothing and it means everything. And if you want to be part of this community in an even deeper way, I want to warmly invite you to become a channel member. Members get early access to videos before they go public, which means you'll be among the very first people to receive each new study as it comes out. More than that, membership is a way of saying, I believe in what this channel is doing, and I want to be part of making it happen. If that resonates with you, you'll find the join button just below the video. Come and be part of this. This community is something I'm genuinely proud of, and I would love for you to be a full part of it. Now, let's go into the Word together. Lesson 1. Chasing the wrong things will hollow you out, no matter how much you accumulate. Ecclesiastes 1:2 declares, in words that have echoed through 3,000 years of human history, "Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity." Let's begin here, right at the beginning, because this verse is the key that unlocks everything else in the book. It is the thesis. It is the premise from which every other observation flows, and it has been widely misunderstood, often dismissed as the despairing cry of a man who gave up on life, when in reality it is something far more powerful. It is the declaration of a man who refused to let himself be deceived any longer. The word Solomon uses, translated as vanity in most traditional versions, is the Hebrew word hevel. And hevel doesn't actually mean worthless. It means breath. It means vapor. It means the kind of thing that is real when you see it, but is gone the moment you reach for it. Think of the mist that rises from a river on a cold morning. It exists. You can see it. It is real. But it is not permanent, and you cannot hold it in your hands, and if you try to build your life on it, you will be disappointed every single time. Solomon spent his entire life running the most ambitious experiment any human being has ever conducted. He had access to resources that dwarf the resources of any person who has ever read these words. His wealth was legendary, not just in Israel, but throughout the known world. Kings and queens traveled from distant lands just to see what his kingdom had built and to hear the wisdom that had made it possible. He was the most powerful man in the world, and he used that position to pursue everything the world had to offer. He pursued wisdom, and gained more of it than anyone. He pursued pleasure, and indulged himself in every legitimate delight available to a man of his status. He pursued great works, building programs, gardens, vineyards, parks, palaces, things of genuine beauty and achievement. He accumulated wealth on a scale that would be almost incomprehensible today. He surrounded himself with the most talented people available. He held nothing back and left nothing unexplored. And when he sat down at the end of all of that striving and surveyed everything he had built and everything he had experienced, the feeling that came back to him was not triumph. It was emptiness. Not because any of those things were evil, not because wealth is wicked, or beauty is wrong, or achievement is sinful, but because he had made the mistake of asking these things to carry a weight they were never designed to carry. He had looked to them for what only God can give, and they failed him, not because they were bad things, they were good things, but because good things become hollow idols the moment you make them your ultimate thing. The first lesson of Ecclesiastes is this: there is a difference between things that are good and things that are ultimate. God alone is ultimate. Everything else, career, relationship, reputation, achievement, pleasure, comfort, even family, is a gift when received from his hand, and a trap when elevated to the position of God in your heart. When you chase the right things for the wrong reasons, you will always end up empty. But when you receive every good thing as a gift from the one who gives all good things, even the simplest pleasures become filled with meaning and grace. Stop demanding that temporary things provide what only the eternal God can offer. That shift alone will change everything. Lesson 2. The rhythms of creation reveal a God who is faithful, not absent. In Ecclesiastes 1:4-7, Solomon turns his gaze to the world around him and describes something that strikes him as simultaneously reassuring and disorienting: the endless, cyclical motion of creation. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth for ever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. Read this passage without rushing through it, and you feel something particular, a kind of vertigo. Generations come and go. The sun rises and sets and rises again. The wind makes its circuits. The rivers run their courses, and the world rolls on, indifferent to the individuals passing through it. Human beings arrive, pour themselves into their lives, and disappear, while creation continues its rhythms without missing a beat. This can feel at first like evidence of cosmic meaninglessness. If the world keeps going no matter what we do, does anything we do actually matter? But look more carefully at what Solomon is actually observing. He is not describing chaos, he is describing order. Extraordinary, precise, enduring order. The sun doesn't rise whenever it feels like it. The rivers don't run randomly. The wind doesn't blow in arbitrary directions. There are circuits, patterns, rhythms that have persisted with clock-like consistency since the moment of creation. And patterns don't emerge from nothing. Patterns point to a mind behind them. Order points to an ordering intelligence. The cycles of creation that Solomon describes are not evidence of an absent God. They are evidence of a consistently faithful one. They are the signature of a God who sustains his creation with meticulous, unbroken care. The same God who upholds the circuits of the wind also upholds the course of your life. He does not forget his world. He does not forget you. The rhythms of nature that have continued without interruption for thousands of years are testimony to the reliability of the God who set them in motion. And if he is that faithful to the sun and the rivers, he is faithful to you. Lesson 3. The pursuit of wisdom is painful, but it is still the right pursuit. Ecclesiastes 1:18 lands with unusual force. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. If you have spent any time at all trying to grow in wisdom, you've probably bumped up against this reality yourself. You pick up a book that changes the way you see the world, and the new way of seeing is painful because you can't unsee it. You gain a deeper understanding of human nature, and what you understand saddens you. You come to a clearer view of your own heart, and what you find there is humbling and sometimes devastating. You begin to understand the world's suffering with more clarity, and that clarity breaks your heart in ways that a less informed version of you would have been protected from. This is what Solomon is talking about. The increase of wisdom is often accompanied by the increase of sorrow. Not because wisdom is bad for you, Solomon never concludes that, but because wisdom sees clearly, and this world, seen clearly, contains profound grief. The injustice, the suffering, the way that human beings treat one another, the gap between what the world could be and what it is. Wisdom sees all of that without the protection of comfortable ignorance, and it grieves. But here is the thing. Solomon could have stopped pursuing wisdom. He could have decided that the pain of knowing more was not worth it and retreated into comfortable, unchallenging shallowness. He didn't. He kept going. Because the alternative to painful wisdom is not painless comfort. It is the particular vulnerability of the person who doesn't see what's coming, who doesn't understand what's happening, who cannot navigate the complexities of life because they have refused to develop the tools required to do so. A wisdom that costs you something is still infinitely more valuable than an ignorance that feels comfortable in the short term. Don't run from the kind of growth that hurts. Walk toward it. Let truth do its work, even when the work is difficult. On the other side of honest wisdom is a faith that does not shatter when the hard things come, because it was built knowing they would. Lesson 4. Pleasure is a gift from God, but it was never meant to be your God. In Ecclesiastes 2:1-11, Solomon narrates his extraordinary and deeply personal experiment with pleasure. He says, "I said in mine heart, go to now. I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity." He proceeds to describe in detail the scope of what he tried. He planted vineyards, he built gardens and parks and orchards. He made pools of water to irrigate growing trees. He acquired servants and enormous herds and flocks. He gathered silver and gold, the treasures of kings. He surrounded himself with musicians, male and female singers, and with the delights of the sons of men. He says, "Whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy." And then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. This passage is not anti-pleasure. Solomon is not telling you that enjoying good food, beautiful music, a well-tended garden, or the company of people you love is somehow wrong or spiritually suspect. God created the human capacity for delight, and that capacity is one of the most beautiful things about being made in the image of a creator God who himself looks at what he has made and calls it good. The problem is not pleasure. The problem is the elevation of pleasure to the status of ultimate purpose. The problem is what happens when you make the pursuit of feeling good the organizing principle of your life. When the question you ask about every decision is, will this make me happy, rather than, is this faithful, or is this true, or is this right? When you make pleasure your purpose, you discover something that every person who has ever made that trade eventually discovers. Pleasure, pursued for its own sake, is a diminishing return. It requires more stimulation to produce the same effect. The thing that delighted you yesterday becomes ordinary today. The experience that felt extraordinary the first time becomes routine by the 10th. You are always chasing the last version of the feeling rather than actually living your life. And you end up like Solomon looking at his vineyards and his gardens and his treasures, feeling the particular emptiness of someone who got everything they wanted and found that wanting was what gave it value. Receive pleasure as God's gift. Let it point you to the giver, but never make it your foundation. It cannot hold the weight of a life built on it. Lesson 5. Work is not meaningless, but it needs the right foundation to mean something. Ecclesiastes 2:17-23 contains some of the most emotionally raw material in the book. Solomon says, "Therefore I hated all my labor in which I labor under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who comes after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. Yet he will be master of all, for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity." And again, "What hath man of all his labor and of the vexation of his heart, wherein he hath labored under the sun? For all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night." There is a grief in this passage that anyone who has ever worked hard at something significant will recognize. You pour years, decades sometimes, into building something, a career, a business, a home, a reputation, an organization. And as you build, you know, somewhere in the back of your mind, that there will come a day when you step away from it, and everything you built will be handed to someone else. Someone who may or may not appreciate what it cost you. Someone who may or may not preserve what you created. Someone who may in fact undo in a short time what took you a lifetime to build. That knowledge, fully faced, is genuinely painful. And Solomon doesn't pretend otherwise. He felt it deeply. He named it honestly. But watch what happens when the foundation shifts. Later in the same chapter, Solomon begins to glimpse a different way of holding work, not as a monument to human achievement, not as a bid for permanence, not as something that will outlast you and secure your legacy, but as a daily offering to God. When work is done for the Lord rather than for yourself, the terror of what happens after you are gone loses its sting, because you were never building for your own legacy. You were being faithful today with what God placed in your hands today. And faithfulness, unlike legacy, doesn't depend on who comes after you or what they do with what you built. It only depends on whether you showed up fully, honestly, diligently for the time you were given. Work done in that spirit is not vanity. It is worship, and it carries a dignity that no amount of success or failure can take away. Lesson 6. Every season of your life has been appointed by God, including this one. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8 is one of the most quoted and most beloved passages in all of Scripture. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. Every pair of opposites in this poem covers the full spectrum of human experience: birth and death, planting and uprooting, weeping and laughing, mourning and dancing, building and breaking down. And the repeated word at the heart of all of it is time, a season, a purpose. The Hebrew word used here, like et, carries more weight than the English word time typically conveys. It doesn't just mean a period on a calendar. It carries the sense of an appointed moment, a divinely determined season that exists within the sovereign plan of a God who is working all things toward a purpose that is beyond our ability to fully see. This is not fatalism. It is faith. Fatalism says, whatever happens, happens and nothing matters. Faith says, whatever happens, happens within the sovereign plan of a God who loves me and is working all things together for a purpose that is real and good, even when I cannot see it. The difference is everything. When you know that the season you are in, even if it is a season of weeping, a season of mourning, a season of loss and breaking down, is an appointed season rather than a random disaster, something in you shifts. You stop fighting the season and start asking what God is doing in it. You stop demanding that the painful chapter end immediately and start looking for what it is meant to produce. Every season has a purpose. Your current season has a purpose. Ask God to show it to you. And trust that the one who appointed this time also appointed the season that follows it. Lesson 7. The longing for more that never goes away is a sign that you were made for eternity. Ecclesiastes 3:11 contains one of the most extraordinary sentences in the entire Bible. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Or the phrase, set the world in their heart, is translated in other versions as set eternity in the human heart. And when you sit with that phrase, it explains something about human experience that nothing else fully explains. Why is it that human beings, unique among all creatures on earth, are never completely at home in the present moment? Why do we always reach beyond what we have? Why does every achievement leave behind it a residue of, is that all? Why do the most beautiful moments in life carry within them a quality of longing, as if they are almost what we were looking for but not quite it? Why does every relationship, however deep and loving, leave a pocket of emptiness that even the best love cannot completely fill? Every other creature on earth appears to be satisfied with its existence in the moment. But human beings are constitutionally restless. We are always reaching. We are always longing. We are always searching for a home we cannot quite locate. Ecclesiastes answers the question. God has set eternity in our hearts. We were made for more than this world can offer. Not because this world is bad, it is staggeringly beautiful, but because it is not our final home. The longing you feel, that persistent, aching sense that there must be something more, that the best things here are only hints of something greater. That longing is not a flaw, it is a compass. It is pointing you, every time you feel it, toward the God who is himself, the fulfillment of everything the heart of a human being was made to desire. Do not try to silence that longing with more things, more experiences, more distractions. Follow it to its source. Follow it to God. He is the home your soul has been looking for since the moment of your birth. Lesson 8. The ability to receive simple joy is a grace. Don't take it for granted. In Ecclesiastes 3:12-13, after wrestling with eternity and time and the deep purposes of God, Solomon arrives at something small, warm, and profound. I know that there is no good in them, but for a man to rejoice and to do good in his life, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor, it is the gift of God. This is a passage that rewards slow reading. Solomon is not pivoting to shallow optimism after deep theology. He's making a theological point that is as deep as anything else he has said. The capacity to sit down, eat a meal, drink with joy, and find genuine delight in the work of your hands. This is not a distraction from God's gifts. It is itself one of his greatest gifts. Think about what it would mean to have every material thing you could need and yet be unable to enjoy any of it. To sit at a feast and taste nothing. To achieve something genuinely wonderful and feel none of the satisfaction. To be surrounded by people who love you and be unable to receive the warmth of it. That is a particular kind of poverty that no amount of abundance can cure. And on the other side, think about the person who has very little by material measure, but who receives every simple thing: a cup of coffee in the morning, the laughter of children, the satisfaction of a task completed, the beauty of a sunset, as the extraordinary gift that it is. That person is rich in ways that cannot be quantified. God distributes this capacity for simple joy as a grace. It is not automatic. It is cultivated through gratitude, through presence, through the daily practice of receiving good things as gifts from the hand of a good God, rather than as rights that you have earned or compensations for a life that should be giving you more. Do not rush past the small pleasures of your days. They are not distractions from the spiritual life. They are the spiritual life, lived in its most ordinary and most beautiful expression. Lesson 9. The injustice you see is real, and God will address every bit of it. In Ecclesiastes 3:16-17, Solomon turns his attention to one of the most disturbing features of human society. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness, that iniquity was there. He is describing something every honest observer of human life has noticed and been troubled by: the corruption of the systems that are supposed to deliver justice, the courtroom where decisions are bought rather than argued, the institution where the powerful are protected and the vulnerable are disregarded, the situation where doing the right thing results in punishment while doing the wrong thing results in reward. Solomon has seen it. He names it without minimizing it. He doesn't explain it away or suggest that it isn't as bad as it looks. He acknowledges the full weight of it. And then, without losing any of that honest assessment, he lifts his eyes to a truth that provides something that all the earthly courts have failed to provide. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. The God who sees every courtroom, even the ones corrupted by human sin, has not excused what happened in them. He has not overlooked the injustice. He has not accepted a bribe or been persuaded by the arguments of the powerful. He is keeping a perfect record, and he has appointed a time, his time, not ours, at which every act, whether good or evil, whether seen by human witnesses or conducted in secret, will be brought into the light and judged with absolute, perfect, unerring justice. If you have been wronged and have found no remedy in the systems of this world, this is not the end of your story. If you have watched the wicked prosper and the righteous suffer and found no human explanation that satisfies, hold on. The final chapter has not been written yet. God's justice is not delayed because he is inattentive. It is timed because he is sovereign. Trust him with what you cannot fix. He sees everything, he forgets nothing, and he will make all things right. Lesson 10. You are not made for isolation. Community is one of God's greatest gifts. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12 may be the most practically tender passage in the entire book. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat, but how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Solomon illustrates the value of companionship with three images. Two people working together accomplish more than either would alone. Two people who travel together have someone to help them up when they fall. And the person who walks alone has no one. Two people staying warm together can survive a cold that would be dangerous for a person alone. And a threefold cord, most likely a reference to two people in relationship with God as their third strand, is extraordinarily difficult to break. These images are simple. They are also profound. They describe the human need for community not as a weakness or a concession to our limitations, but as a design feature. We were made for relationship. We were made for community. The God who exists in the eternal relationship of Trinity, Father, Son, and Spirit, made human beings in his image, and that image includes the relational nature of our design. The person who insists they can walk with God without walking with God's people is misunderstanding both God and themselves. The lone wolf posture, the I don't need anyone, I just need God approach to faith, is spiritually dangerous precisely because it refuses the very gift God provides through community. Someone to help you up when you fall. Someone to keep you warm in the cold seasons. Someone to hold the other end of the cord when the wind tries to snap it. Invest in real community. Build the relationships where people know you well enough to help you up when you're down. And be that person for others. The cord with three strands is not easily broken, but it has to be braided first. Lesson 11. The trap of always wanting more will drain you dry. Learn the discipline of enough. Ecclesiastes 4:6 says something quietly revolutionary. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. And then in chapter 5 verse 10, Solomon makes the same point from a different angle. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. The logic of the world we live in operates on a single relentless premise. More is better. More money, more status, more followers, more recognition, more space, more experiences, more options, more achievements. The entire economy of modern life is built on the cultivation of dissatisfaction. Every advertisement exists to make you feel that what you currently have is not enough, and that what you need to feel complete is one more purchase away. Solomon looked at this dynamic thousands of years before the invention of advertising and called it exactly what it is: vanity. The person who loves money is not satisfied by money. The person who is always reaching for more never feels the peace of enough. They arrive at every destination and immediately become aware of the next destination, and the next, and the next, always running, never resting, always accumulating, never content. And there is a weariness to that way of living that no amount of success can cure, because the cure is not arriving at more. The cure is learning that enough is a posture rather than an amount. Contentment, real, grounded, spiritual contentment, is not resignation. It is not the giving up of ambition or the refusal to work toward better things. It is the deeply Christian conviction that your worth is not determined by what you have, that your security does not rest on your accumulation, and that the God who provides what you need today is the same God who will provide what you need tomorrow. The person who holds their handful with quietness, who receives what they have with open-handed gratitude rather than white-knuckled striving, is experiencing a freedom that the person with both hands full of labor and vexation has never tasted. Choose the handful with quietness. Choose the discipline of enough. It is one of the most countercultural and most liberating decisions you will ever make. Lesson 12. The words you speak before God should be few, chosen carefully, and always kept. Ecclesiastes 5:1-7 contains some of the most urgent warnings in the entire book about the way we approach God in worship and in prayer. Solomon begins, "Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. And then, when thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay." There is a particular kind of carelessness that can creep into religious life when faith becomes routine, a kind of spiritual autopilot where we go through the motions of worship without the weight of genuine encounter. Solomon is warning against something more specific than mere distraction. He is warning against the presumptuous rashness of people who approach God with more words than reverence, more promises than intention, more noise than genuine engagement. God is in heaven, and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. That sentence alone deserves to recalibrate the way any of us approach prayer and worship. There is a kind of person who, in a moment of crisis or desperation, makes extravagant promises to God. "Lord, if you get me through this, I will do anything. I will give everything. I will never complain again." And then, when the crisis passes and the moment of desperation fades, quietly forgets what was said. Solomon treats this with unusual seriousness. Better not to vow at all than to vow and fail to pay. Because behind this warning is a truth about the character of the God we are approaching. He is not impressed by religious performance. He is not moved by elaborate words that have no weight behind them. He wants sincere engagement. He wants the real you, honestly seeking the real him. Let your words before God be fewer, weightier, and truer. And when you make a promise to the Lord, keep it every time. Lesson 13. Wealth hoarded rather than stewarded becomes a burden and a snare. Ecclesiastes 5:13-16 describes what Solomon calls a grievous evil. There is a sore evil which I have seen under the sun, namely, riches kept for the owners thereof to their hurt. But those riches perish by evil travail, and he begetteth a son, and there is nothing in his hand. As he came forth of his mother's womb, naked shall he return to go as he came, and shall take nothing of his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. The image Solomon draws here is bleak and unavoidable. A man spends his life accumulating. He builds wealth, he protects it, he pours his energy into keeping and growing what he has gathered. And then something happens. A bad investment, a market collapse, a legal disaster, a health catastrophe, and the wealth disappears. And he leaves this world with the same thing he brought into it, nothing. Now, Solomon is not teaching that wealth itself is sinful. He makes clear elsewhere in the book that the ability to enjoy the fruit of your labor is itself a gift from God. What he is targeting here is a specific pathology, the hoarding mindset. The person who accumulates not out of wisdom and stewardship, but out of anxiety and control, who holds their resources so tightly that they become a source of constant stress rather than a means of blessing, who stores up what could have been shared, who keeps what could have been given, who protects wealth so zealously that the wealth ends up protecting nothing worth protecting. The corrective is not poverty, it is open-handed stewardship. The recognition that everything you have is held on loan from the God who owns all things, and that your responsibility is not to guard it, but to deploy it, wisely, generously, faithfully, for the purposes he intends. The person who lives with that recognition doesn't grip their resources in fear. They hold them in open hands, ready to give when God prompts giving, ready to invest when God prompts investment, and at peace with whatever comes, because their security is not in their bank account, but in the God who fills it. Lesson 14. Not just what you have, but the ability to enjoy it is a gift, and you should receive it as such. Ecclesiastes 5:18-20 returns with a kind of deliberate warmth to the theme of receiving life's good things with gratitude. Behold that which I have seen. It is good and comely for one to eat and to drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor that he taketh under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. Notice the layered gifting Solomon describes. God gives the riches and the wealth, but separately, and this is the point, God also gives the power to eat of it, the ability to receive, the capacity to enjoy, the freedom from the anxiety and the grasping and the obsessing that so often strip people of the very pleasures their work was supposed to produce. There are people who have everything and enjoy nothing, because the anxiety of maintaining what they have consumes all the space that enjoyment would have occupied. And there are people who have comparatively little and enjoy everything they have been given because they have received the grace of a grateful heart. The grace of a grateful heart is not automatically given to anyone who acquires wealth. It is specifically given by God, and it is one of the most undervalued gifts he offers. If you find yourself in a season where you can eat your food with joy, drink with gladness, find genuine satisfaction in the work your hands do, and receive the good moments of your days as gifts rather than rights, thank God for it, seriously and specifically. Because that capacity is itself a grace, and it can be taken away, and the person who has it without recognizing it is at risk of losing it without knowing what they lost. Lesson 15. A good name is among the most valuable things a human being can possess. Guard it accordingly. Ecclesiastes 7:1 opens with a statement that cuts through the noise of a culture obsessed with image management, personal branding, and the performance of success. A good name is better than precious ointment. In Solomon's world, precious ointment, fine oil and perfume, was a luxury commodity of extraordinary value, associated with royalty, with consecration, with the highest expressions of honor. For a king to compare the value of a good name favorably to such a precious commodity is to say something radical. The reputation you build through actual integrity, through consistent honesty, through the way you treat people when nothing is at stake and no one is watching, that reputation is worth more than any material asset you could possibly accumulate. This lesson stings a little in the age of social media, where the project of building an impressive image has never been easier or more tempting to confuse with actually being an impressive person. You can curate a digital persona that presents only the best angles, only the most flattering moments, only the version of yourself that you most want the world to see, and accumulate a following that has no idea who you actually are. That is not a good name. That is a good image, and there is a difference that matters enormously because images fade and crack under pressure, while a genuinely good name deepens over time. The question this lesson puts to you is an honest one. What do the people who know you best, the ones who have seen you under pressure, who have watched you when things were hard, who have been on the receiving end of your words and your choices, what do they say about you? Not what do they say publicly, not what they say when they are complimenting you, but what is the actual impression left behind by the way you live? That is your real name. Guard it. Invest in it. Choose integrity in the small moments precisely because the small moments are where real character is formed. Lesson 16. There is a wisdom that only grief can teach. Don't run from the house of mourning. Ecclesiastes 7:2-4 contains one of Solomon's most counterintuitive and most spiritually mature observations. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. To understand what Solomon is actually saying here, it helps to ask what he is not saying. He is not saying that celebration is wrong or that laughter is spiritually inferior. He is not prescribing perpetual mourning as the ideal spiritual state. He is making a specific observation about the respective effects of grief and festivity on the human heart. Feasts are good. They bring people together. They create joy. They mark significant moments. But feasts don't tend to change you at a fundamental level. You leave a celebration feeling better than when you arrived, but essentially the same person. Funerals work differently. When you sit at the bedside of someone who is dying, or stand at a graveside, or walk through the rooms of a home after someone you loved has left it for the last time, something happens to your inner calibration that no celebration can replicate. The things that seemed urgent this morning suddenly seem trivial. The things you kept putting off because there was always going to be more time suddenly appear in a new and pressing light. The petty frustrations that were consuming your emotional energy feel exactly as small as they are. Grief is clarifying in a way that nothing else in human experience is. Solomon is not telling you to go looking for sorrow. He is telling you not to run from it. When loss comes, and it will come, resist the cultural pressure to distract yourself away from it as quickly as possible, to fill the silence with noise, to skip the grieving and get back to normal. Let the grief do its work. Sit in the house of mourning long enough to let it make you wiser. The wisdom it produces is not available anywhere else. Lesson 17. The patient person has a power that the proud person will never understand. Ecclesiastes 7:8 says simply and definitively, "Better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit." The beginning of things is often exciting. New projects carry energy. New relationships carry possibility. New seasons carry hope. And there is real value in beginning, in the courage it takes to start something, to commit to a direction, to take the first step. But Solomon says the end of a thing is better, not the beginning, the end, which means that what you do between the beginning and the end is what actually matters. And what do you need between the beginning and the end? Patience. The patient person understands something that the proud person refuses to believe, that the most important things in life take more time than we initially expect. That character is not built in a single dramatic moment, but in the accumulated faithfulness of ordinary days. That relationships don't deepen overnight, but through the sustained investment of presence and honesty across years. that the work of God in a human soul is often slow by human standards and always perfect by His. The proud person demands immediate results. They push the process. They mistake speed for progress. They get frustrated when things don't move at their pace, and they often abandon what would have been beautiful if they had stayed in it long enough for it to become what it was meant to be. The patient person has learned to live in the middle of the story without needing to rush to the end. They trust the author enough to let the chapter develop. They have discovered that the period between beginning and ending, handled with faithfulness and patience, is where the most important things happen. Don't despise the slow season. It is producing something in you that the fast seasons cannot. The end of this thing, if you stay patient, will be better than the beginning. Hold on. Lesson 18. Unresolved anger is a poison. Get it out of your heart before it defines you. Ecclesiastes 7:9 issues a warning that is as relevant today as the moment it was written. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. There is an important distinction to make before unpacking this verse. Solomon is not saying that anger is always wrong. The Bible is full of examples of righteous anger, anger that responds to genuine injustice, that refuses to minimize real harm, that calls things what they are rather than making peace with what ought to be resisted. The anger of a parent at an injustice done to their child, the anger of a pastor at false teaching that is harming his congregation, the anger of a person of conscience at cruelty or corruption. These are legitimate, even necessary, responses. God Himself is described throughout Scripture as righteously angry at sin. What Solomon is targeting is a different animal entirely. The hasty, impulsive, self-centered anger that flares without adequate cause, that is held rather than resolved, that becomes a permanent resident in the soul rather than a passing visitor. The anger that, months or years after the event that sparked it, is still burning because you have chosen to keep feeding it. The bitterness that takes over the narrative of your life, coloring every subsequent experience through its lens. The grudge that you carry so long and so deeply that you have forgotten what life felt like before it. That kind of anger does not hurt the person who caused it. It lives in you, it works on you. It shapes the way you see people, interpret events, enter relationships, and engage with the world. It does not protect you, it imprisons you. The fool is the person who lets anger make its home in their chest. The wise person is the one who processes it, who brings it honestly before God, who chooses the hard and necessary work of forgiveness where forgiveness is possible, who sets down what they are not obligated to carry, and who walks forward free. Don't let anger become your identity. Don't let what was done to you define who you become. Give it to God, all of it, and walk free. Lesson 19. Wisdom gives you something that wealth, power, and reputation cannot. It gives you actual life. Ecclesiastes 7:11-12 draws a careful comparison. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it there is profit to them that see the sun. For wisdom is a defense, and money is a defense. But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom giveth life to them that have it. Solomon is not dismissing the value of financial provision. He acknowledges honestly that money offers a real form of defense. It provides options, it buys access, it protects against certain categories of hardship. He's not naive about how the material world works, but he draws a sharp distinction between what money can do and what wisdom can do. Money defends the body, wisdom defends the soul. Money buys security in the present. Wisdom provides direction for the future. Money can purchase almost everything the market offers. But money cannot purchase discernment, integrity, the ability to make good decisions under pressure, the wisdom to navigate complex relationships, or the capacity to find meaning in suffering. Those things come from wisdom. And specifically, Solomon has argued throughout this book from the wisdom that is rooted in the fear of the Lord. And here is the ultimate claim. Wisdom giveth life to them that have it, not just survival, not just the biological continuation of existence. Life, the kind of life that is genuinely worth living, that has direction and depth and meaning and joy, that does not collapse under pressure because it is built on something that pressure cannot destroy. The person who has money but lacks wisdom often uses their resources to build the very circumstances that destroy them. The person who has wisdom but limited resources finds ways to live richly in the ways that matter most. Pursue wisdom above all other investments. It is the only asset that appreciates without limit and pays dividends that no market can crash. Lesson 20. You need grace every single day, and so does everyone around you. Ecclesiastes 7:20 confronts us with one of the most uncomfortable and most liberating truths in the entire book, for there is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. Let this land for a moment. Not a just man, not a single one. Every person who has ever walked this earth, outside of the one exception who walked it and died and rose for our sake, has sinned. Every mentor who inspired you has sinned. Every leader you admire has sinned. Every parent who raised you, every pastor who taught you, every friend who has stood beside you through the hardest moments of your life. Every single one of them is a flawed, broken, imperfect human being who does not always do good and does not always get it right. And so are you. So are you. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is a necessary one, because the person who does not fully reckon with their own imperfection will spend their life swinging between the crushing weight of unmet self-expectations and the self-righteous judgment of others who fail to meet the impossible standard they have set. The recognition that no one is completely righteous, that we are all in daily need of grace, all perpetually dependent on the mercy of God, all running the race with a limp. This recognition produces something beautiful when it is genuinely received. Compassion. Compassion for yourself when you fall short, compassion for others when they fall short. The grace you have needed, the grace that covers your failures, that meets you in your weakness, that never gives up on the person God is making you, is also the grace that every imperfect person around you needs just as desperately. Give it freely. You know what it feels like to need it. Lesson 21. We were made upright. Sin is the distortion, not the design. Ecclesiastes 7:29 arrives at a conclusion that is simultaneously simple and profound. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. After all of his searching, through wisdom and folly, through pleasure and work, through observation of human society in all its complexity, Solomon arrives at a foundational theological claim. God made us upright. The word carries the sense of straight, correct, morally good. We were created in the image of a God who is holy and righteous, and the design that image reflects is a design for uprightness, for integrity, for relational wholeness, for harmony with God and with each other and with creation. But we have sought out many inventions. That phrase is rich and damning. It refers to the extraordinary human capacity for self-deception and moral creativity, the ability to construct elaborate systems of rationalization, to bend what is true to serve what we want, to invent justifications for what we know is wrong, to substitute our own schemes and strategies and moral frameworks for the straightforward design we were given. The complexity of the human moral predicament, the wars, the broken families, the systemic injustices, the addiction and abuse and cruelty and self-destruction, none of this is God's design. It is the accumulated consequence of generations of human beings who chose to go their own way rather than the way they were made for. But this lesson contains enormous hope within its honesty. If sin is a distortion of the design rather than the design itself, if the brokenness we experience in ourselves and in the world is corruption rather than original intent, then the corruption is not the final word. The God who made us upright is also the God who redeems, who restores, who is in the business of making all things new. The person you were made to be is not the person sin has made you. And the God who made you upright has not given up on the project of getting you there. Lesson 22. True wisdom provides a strength that no external power can replicate. Ecclesiastes 7:19 makes a claim that should stop every person who has ever been tempted to rely on their own strength, their own connections, their own resources, or their own cleverness. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. 10 mighty men. In the ancient world, where physical strength and military force were the currencies of safety and power, having 10 skilled warriors by your side was a significant form of protection. And Solomon says, wisdom surpasses that, because wisdom is an internal resource. It operates from within rather than from without. It can't be taken away by an enemy, lost in a financial collapse, or rendered useless by a change of circumstances. The wise person carries their most important asset with them at all times, in every situation, under every kind of pressure. Wisdom has already played out the likely consequences of various courses of action and avoided the ones that lead to destruction. It has already identified the relationships that build up and the ones that tear down and made deliberate choices about which to invest in. It has already recognized the trap before the foot falls into it. The victories of wisdom are often invisible, the crisis that never happened, the sin that was never committed, the relationship that was never built with the wrong person, because wisdom prevents problems rather than solving them after the fact. The 10 mighty men can only protect you from enemies you can see. Wisdom protects you from the ones you can't. Pursue it daily, relentlessly, through prayer and through scripture, and through the counsel of people of proven character. It is the most powerful resource a human being can carry. Lesson 23. Know how to navigate authority, and always keep your conscience intact. Ecclesiastes 8:25 offers wisdom about living within human systems of authority that is as relevant in a modern workplace as it was in Solomon's royal court. I counsel thee to keep the king's commandment, and that in regard of the oath of God. Be not hasty to go out of his sight. Stand not in an evil thing, for he doeth whatsoever pleaseth him. Where the word of a king is, there is power. And who may say unto him, What doest thou? Whoso keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. There is practical wisdom here about navigating authority. In general, not in all cases, but in general, the person who operates with respect for legitimate authority, who fulfills their responsibilities faithfully, who does not create unnecessary conflict and does not waste energy positioning themselves against the people they serve, tends to avoid a great deal of the kind of friction and consequence that comes from habitual defiance. This is not about being a pushover. It is about understanding that most of the authority structures in your life, your employer, your government, your civic institutions, exist for reasons that serve a legitimate protective function, and that respecting them is usually the wise course of action. But notice the crucial qualifier: a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. Wisdom is not mere compliance. Wisdom knows when to be quiet and when to speak, when to defer and when to stand firm, when obedience to human authority is the right call and when obedience to God requires something different. The person whose conscience has been genuinely formed by God will sometimes face situations where those two demands conflict. And in those situations, the answer is always the same. Fear God first. Obey human authority within the space that fear of God permits. And never let institutional loyalty become the thing that silences your conscience. Lesson 24. Accepting the limits of your control is not defeat. It is the beginning of peace. Ecclesiastes 8:6-8 names something that the modern world's obsession with optimization, efficiency, and personal agency finds deeply uncomfortable. There are things you simply cannot control. Because to every purpose there is time and judgment, therefore the misery of man is great upon him. For he knoweth not that which shall be, for who can tell him when it shall be? There is no man that hath power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, neither hath he power in the day of death, and there is no discharge in that war, neither shall wickedness deliver those that are given to it. The list of things beyond human control is longer than comfort allows us to admit on most days. We cannot control the hour of our death. We cannot control the behavior of other people, no matter how much influence we think we have over them. We cannot control economies or weather or the decisions made by people in power who are making decisions that affect our lives. We cannot control which seeds in our work will produce fruit and which will not. We cannot fully control what people think of us, despite the effort we sometimes pour into managing our image. The boundary of human control is much closer to home than most of us want to acknowledge. And yet, the recognition of that boundary is not the beginning of despair. It is, paradoxically, the beginning of peace. Because the moment you stop trying to control what you cannot control, you are free. The energy you were pouring into an impossible project, the project of managing every variable, anticipating every outcome, protecting yourself from every possible threat, that energy becomes available for something else. You can be fully present to the moment in front of you. You can do the thing that is actually within your power to do today, with full attention and full effort, and then release what happens next to the God who actually holds it. Sovereignty belongs to Him, not to you. And He is far better at carrying it than you are. Lesson 25. Righteous suffering is real, and it demands honesty, not easy explanation. Ecclesiastes 8:14 is one of the most theologically honest and emotionally difficult verses in the book. There is a vanity which is done upon the earth, that there be just men, unto whom it happeneth according to the work of the wicked. Again, there be wicked men, to whom it happeneth according to the work of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. Solomon is describing something that any person who has lived long enough has observed. Sometimes the most faithful, most righteous, most sincere people suffer deeply, while the selfish and the wicked flourish. Not just occasionally, not just as a temporary anomaly, but as a persistent, painful feature of life in a broken world. This observation has two dangerous applications that Solomon implicitly warns against. The first is the cynical conclusion: if faithfulness doesn't reliably produce good outcomes, why bother being faithful? The second is the judgmental conclusion: if this person is suffering, they must have done something to deserve it. Both of these responses to the reality of righteous suffering are forms of theological error, and both have caused enormous additional harm to people who are already suffering. The cynical response makes faithfulness contingent on reward and misses the entire point of walking with God. The judgmental response adds the weight of false accusation to the already crushing weight of genuine pain. Solomon's response to the reality of righteous suffering is neither cynical nor judgmental. It is honest acknowledgement combined with trust. Yes, the world is broken in ways that produce outcomes that don't match our expectations of how justice should work. Yes, the righteous sometimes suffer what the wicked deserve, and that is genuinely terrible. And yes, God sees all of it. His justice is not absent. It is simply operating on a timeline that extends beyond what we can see from where we stand. Hold on. Trust the judge. The final chapter has not been written, and when it is, every account will be settled with perfect precision. Lesson 26. Life is short. Receive its pleasures as gifts, not as consolations. Ecclesiastes 9:7-9 is warm, direct, and surprisingly joyful, given the heaviness of what surrounds it. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. This is not permission to live recklessly. It is not an invitation to hedonism dressed up in the language of wisdom. It is something much more specific and much more beautiful. It is an affirmation that within a life fully surrendered to God, joy is not a distraction. Joy is part of the design. The person who has brought their work before God, who has offered what they do to his oversight and his judgment, who has received their portion with gratitude, that person is free to eat their bread with joy. They don't have to perform a tortured spiritual calculation before every meal. They don't have to qualify every pleasure with a disclaimer. They can love the people in their lives with full-throated warmth and genuine delight. They can wear white garments and anoint their heads, ancient images of celebration and honor, without apology. Receive the life God has given you, not just endure it, not just survive it. Receive it as the portion he has specifically prepared for you, and find in that portion every joy it legitimately contains. Life is genuinely brief, and the person who lives it in a posture of gratitude rather than complaint, of reception rather than grasping, of joy rather than mere endurance, that person honors the God who gave it and makes the most of the time they have been given. Lesson 27. Whatever your hands find to do, do it with everything you have. Ecclesiastes 9:10 is one of the most energizing verses in all of Scripture for anyone who is tempted by half-heartedness, procrastination, or the creeping feeling that what they do today doesn't really matter. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. The urgency in this verse is real, and it is grounded in a truth that most of us prefer not to sit with for too long. The time you have been given is finite, and the window for action is shorter than it usually feels. Notice what Solomon does not say. He does not say, do the big things with all your might. He does not say, do the important things with all your might. He says, whatsoever thy hand findeth to do. Whatever. The specific thing in front of you today, the task at your desk, the conversation with your child, the email you have been putting off, the project you have been approaching without full engagement because you're not sure it matters, the phone call to the friend who is struggling, the prayer you keep meaning to pray but never quite getting around to. Whatever your hand finds, do it with your might, full engagement, full presence, full effort. Not because the outcome is guaranteed, not because you know what this particular act of faithfulness will produce, but because the opportunity is here now, and now is the only moment you have ever actually been given. This is not a verse about burning yourself out in frantic overachievement. It is a verse about the spiritual seriousness of ordinary faithfulness. The person who does the small things fully, who shows up completely for the unremarkable moments of the unremarkable day, is the person whose life, at the end of it, will be found to have been fully lived. Lesson 28. Life doesn't always reward the expected. Trust God with the outcomes you cannot predict. Ecclesiastes 9:11 delivers one of the most bracing observations in the entire book. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. By every logical expectation, speed wins races. Strength wins battles. Wisdom produces prosperity. Skill earns favor. These are the equations of a fair and predictable world, and they make intuitive sense. But Solomon, in his honest observation of actual life, notes that the world doesn't always honor these equations. The fastest runner doesn't always win. The most prepared army doesn't always prevail. The wisest person doesn't always prosper. The most skilled person doesn't always receive the recognition their skill deserves. Things happen that are not explained by talent, effort, preparation, or character alone. Time and chance happen to them all. This is not a nihilistic statement. It is a humbling one, and in its humility is an invitation. If outcomes cannot be fully explained by human effort alone, then human effort alone is not the most important variable. The one who holds time and chance, the one who determines the rain that falls on the seed, the one who opens and closes doors that human cleverness cannot manipulate, that one is God. And he is working in all the outcomes, the expected and the unexpected, the logical and the inexplicable, toward purposes that are larger and wiser than what we can see from where we stand. Be faithful, work diligently, invest your skill, and then trust the outcomes to the one who actually controls them. Lesson 29. Small acts of carelessness have large consequences. Live with vigilance in the little things. Ecclesiastes 10:1 offers an image that is equal parts beautiful and devastating. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour, so doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. The jar of precious ointment represents a life of accumulated wisdom and integrity. Years of careful choices, consistent honesty, earned trust, the slow building of a character and a reputation that people rely on. One small dead fly, one small act of folly, one moment of carelessness, one lapse in judgment or integrity, and the entire jar is contaminated. The value destroyed is wildly disproportionate to the size of the contamination. Solomon gives this warning not to produce paralyzing fear, but to cultivate what we might call vigilance in the small things. Because small choices are where character actually lives. Most of us will never face the grand, dramatic moral choice. The moment when we are tempted to commit some enormous act of evil and have to make a clear, conscious decision against it. What most of us face every single day are small choices. The small exaggeration you tell to make the story better. The small corner you cut when no one would know the difference. The small unkindness you let yourself get away with because the person it was directed at doesn't have the power to hold you accountable. The small compromise that seems harmless in isolation. These are the flies. These are the ones to watch. Because integrity is not built in the dramatic moments, it is built or eroded in the accumulation of small ones. Guard the jar carefully. Don't let the small things contaminate what took years to build. Lesson 30. Waiting for perfect conditions is just fear in a respectable disguise. Act in faith. Ecclesiastes 11:4 challenges one of the most seductive forms of spiritual procrastination there is. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. The person Solomon describes here is not lazy. They are careful. They are watching the conditions. They are making sure everything is just right before they take the risk of planting their seed. They are looking at the wind and the clouds and the weather forecast and running all the calculations one more time, trying to determine whether the conditions are favorable enough to justify the risk of action. And they never sow, and they never reap, because the perfect conditions never come. There is always a reason to wait. There is always a variable that hasn't resolved yet, a question that hasn't been answered, a fear that hasn't been quieted, a doubt that hasn't been removed. The person waiting for perfect conditions before they step out in faith will wait forever, because faith, by definition, involves stepping forward before all the conditions are perfectly in your favor. If everything were guaranteed and all the variables were controlled and the outcome was certain, you wouldn't need faith. You just need logic. God calls you to sow in the wind, to plant in the uncertain weather, to speak the word that might not be well received, to give the gift that might not produce the outcome you're hoping for, to start the thing before you feel fully ready, to take the step before the path is completely clear. Faith acts. Fear observes the weather. And the harvest, always in every area of life, belongs to the people who planted, not the ones who were still watching the clouds when the season ended. Lesson 31. Work faithfully across every area of your life. You don't know where the fruit will come from. Ecclesiastes 11:6 expands the lesson of faithful action into a principle of wise stewardship. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Morning and evening, beginning and end of the day, the full span of your available energy. Solomon counsels against putting all of your effort into a single venture and withdrawing your hand from everything else. Not because diversification is simply a financial strategy, but because you do not have the knowledge to determine with certainty which investment of your time, energy, and effort God will choose to prosper. You plant what you are given to plant. In every season, in every area, with every tool available to you, and then you watch with a posture of open-handed trust to see where the growth comes from. This is a posture that requires releasing the outcome to God. The farmer who sows in the morning and the evening is not anxious. They are not obsessively checking the soil every hour to see if the seed has germinated. They are planting faithfully in both the morning and the evening. They are doing what is theirs to do, and they are trusting the God who gives the increase to do what is His to do. This is one of the most freeing postures available to a human being. Full effort, released outcome. Do your part with everything you have. Then stand back and watch what God does with it. Often, He does something far better than what you would have planned. Lesson 32. Youth is irreplaceable. Use it for what will last. Ecclesiastes 11:9-10 addresses the young with a combination of genuine warmth and urgent honesty. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Solomon is not crushing the joy of youth with a premature weight of judgment. He is setting that joy in its proper context. Young people should rejoice. They should enjoy the energy, the possibility, the openness to experience that belongs to those years. That is not frivolity. It is the right use of a season that is specifically given for it. But Solomon adds what the culture of youth typically leaves out: the awareness that the choices made in those years are not consequence-free. The habits built in youth become the architecture of the adult life. The character formed in young years is the character that will be leaned on when middle age and old age arrive with their own particular challenges. The knowledge of God sought or neglected in youth shapes the quality of a lifetime of relationship with Him. Youth is not a consequence-free zone. It is a season of extraordinary potential, for good or for ill, and the choices made in it ripple outward into everything that follows. If you are young, this lesson is a gift. Don't waste your youth on things that won't last. Your energy, your passion, your idealism, your capacity for wholehearted commitment, these are extraordinary gifts. Use them for something that will matter when the season of youth has passed. Invest them in God, in people, in character, in the kind of work that serves something larger than your own comfort. The dividends of that investment will compound across a lifetime. Lesson 33. The time to build your relationship with God is when life is good. Don't wait for the crisis. Ecclesiastes 12:1 carries the most tender pastoral urgency in the entire book. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. The word remember here is not simply about mental recollection. It carries the sense of active, attentive orientation toward. Attend to your Creator. Keep Him in view. Order your life around the reality of His existence and His claim on you. Do this now. While you are young, while the energy is still there, while the days are not yet heavy with difficulty and loss, while the horizon still feels open and the future still has many possibilities before it. Because Solomon knows, from long personal experience, that life accumulates difficulty over time. The evil days he refers to are not days of wickedness, but days of trouble, of hardship, of the kind of limitation and loss that tends to increase as the years pass. The body that was once strong becomes fragile, the people you loved begin to leave, the options that were once abundant begin to narrow, and the person who did not cultivate a genuine, deep, practiced relationship with God in the good years will find that relationship far harder to build when the hard years arrive. Not because God becomes less available, but because the habits of the soul are deeply grooved by then, and the habit of neglect is hard to unlearn under pressure. Build the relationship now. Seek God now. Invest in prayer and in scripture and in community and in the daily ordinary disciplines of faith while it is still relatively easy to do so. The relationship you build in the easy season is the relationship that will sustain you in the hard one. You cannot save for the rainy day when the rain has already started. Lesson 34. The body is temporary. Invest in what endures beyond it. In Ecclesiastes 12:2-7, Solomon turns the full force of his poetic genius on one of the realities most of us work hardest to avoid thinking about, the inevitable decline of the physical body. He describes it in metaphorical terms of extraordinary beauty, the darkening of the sun and moon and stars, the trembling of the strong men, the ceasing of the grinding maidens, the shutting of the doors, the silencing of the daughters of music, the shutting of the almond tree blossom, the failing of the grasshopper, the breaking of the silver cord and the golden bowl, the pitcher broken at the fountain, and then, with perfect plainness, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. The body comes from the earth. It is made of the stuff of creation, the atoms that have been cycling through the universe since the beginning, and to that material source it will return. But the spirit, the part of you that knows and chooses and loves and thinks and imagines and grieves and hopes, returns to God, who gave it. It was His to begin with, and it goes back to Him. This passage is not morbid, it is orienting. It directs you to ask the most important question available to a human being. What are you investing in? If you pour all of your effort, all of your worry, all of your resources into the part of you that will return to the earth, the appearance of the body, the pleasures of the flesh, the accumulation of material things, you are investing in something with a firmly fixed expiration date. But if you invest in the Spirit, in the relationship with God who receives it, in the character that reflects His nature, in the love and faithfulness and integrity that outlast the body, you are investing in something that endures. Build for eternity. Live with your spirit in view. The body will go back to the earth. Make sure what goes back to God is worth receiving. Lesson 35. Information is not wisdom, and accumulating one does not automatically produce the other. Ecclesiastes 12:12 offers a warning that has only become more relevant in an era of information overabundance. And further, by these, my son, be admonished, of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Say, we inhabit a world in which more information is available to more people than at any point in all of human history. Every conceivable topic has been written about, podcasted about, YouTubed about, academically studied, and made available in 5 different formats at the touch of a screen. The problem is not access to information. The problem is that we have confused information with wisdom, and the two are not the same thing. Information is what you know. Wisdom is how you live in response to what you know. You can know in great theoretical detail that patience is a virtue and still be the most impatient person in the room. You can know from every angle of biblical exposition that humility is required of the follower of Christ and still be profoundly prideful. You can have read every book on forgiveness and still be carrying bitterness that is destroying your ability to live. Knowledge of a truth and the living of it are two different things, and the gap between them is not closed by acquiring more knowledge. It is closed by obedience, by practice, by the slow, consistent, grace-powered application of what you know to how you actually live. Study God's Word. That is essential and irreplaceable, but never let the study become a substitute for the living. The goal of all this learning is a transformed life, not an impressive library. Lesson 36. Small compromises build big consequences. The hidden math of moral carelessness. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 gives us several images that extend the theme of small foolishness producing large damage, and they deserve careful attention because they are so precisely observed. Ecclesiastes 10:8-9 warns, "He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it, and whoso breaketh an hedge, a serpent shall bite him. Whoso removeth stones shall be hurt therewith, and he that cleaveth wood shall be endangered thereby." Each of these is an image of apparently small actions that carry hidden dangers. The person who digs a trap for someone else falls into it themselves. The harm you intend for others creates risks for yourself. The person who dismantles a protective hedge, a boundary that was there for a reason, exposes themselves to the serpent that the hedge was keeping out. This is the hidden math of moral carelessness. When you remove a boundary that was there to protect you, a relational boundary, a spiritual boundary, a financial boundary, a moral boundary, you don't just remove a limitation. You expose yourself to whatever that boundary was protecting you from, and the serpent that was being kept at bay is still there. It was always there. The boundary was the only thing standing between you and it. Small compromises create large exposures. The integrity you neglect in small things leaves you undefended in large ones. The boundary you cross because it seemed minor is not minor. It is the removal of a protective hedge, and the serpent behind it does not ask whether the breach was intentional or accidental before it bites. Live with deliberateness in the small things. Maintain your boundaries not out of legalism but out of wisdom. They are not restrictions on your freedom. They are the fences that keep the serpents out. Lesson 37. The leader who speaks with grace leaves a legacy. The fool who talks too much destroys themselves. Ecclesiastes 10:12-14 observes something that anyone who has ever been in a leadership context, formal or informal, has witnessed firsthand. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool will swallow up himself. The beginning of the words of his mouth is foolishness, and the end of his talk is mischievous madness. A fool also is full of words. A man cannot tell what shall be, and what shall be after him, who can tell him? The fool's defining characteristic, in Solomon's observation, is not stupidity. It is the compulsive, unself-aware verbosity of someone who has not learned that words are a currency that can be spent and cannot be recalled. The fool begins his speech foolishly and ends it in madness, and the middle is no better. He is full of words, volumes of them, opinions about everything, confident pronouncements about things he doesn't understand, talking simply because he hasn't yet learned the power of silence. And in the end, his words swallow him. They turn against him. They become the testimony that is used against his own character. The wise person's words are gracious. Gracious, which means not merely polite but full of grace, offered with awareness of their weight, selected with care, delivered with the awareness that words create realities. The wise person has learned that you build trust through consistency rather than volume, that you earn credibility through measured, reliable speech rather than through confident proclamations about everything. That saying less and meaning it entirely is far more powerful than saying a great deal and meaning it not at all. In every relationship, as a parent, a spouse, a colleague, a friend, a leader of any kind, let your words be few, gracious, and fully meant. Lesson 38. Neglect is a choice, and it has consequences that compound silently over time. Ecclesiastes 10:18 says with devastating simplicity, "By much slothfulness the building decayeth, and through idleness of the hands the house droppeth through." The image here is precise and instructive. A house that is maintained stays standing. A house that is neglected decays, not in a single dramatic collapse, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, beam by beam, tile by tile. A small crack in the roof that is ignored becomes water damage, that becomes structural rot, that becomes a house that cannot be inhabited. At every stage of that progression, the repair became more expensive and more complex than it would have been at the stage before it. This is the nature of neglect in every area of life. A marriage that is not invested in does not simply plateau, it deteriorates. Slowly, at first almost invisibly, then with gathering speed. A body that is not cared for does not simply stay the same, it declines. The faith that is not fed does not simply remain at its current level. It weakens. The friendship that is not maintained does not simply pause and wait for you. It ends. Neglect is not neutral. It is a choice. And it is a choice that creates consequences, and those consequences compound silently over time until the day arrives when you are standing in the middle of something that has become very difficult to repair. The time to fix the small crack is when it is still a small crack. The time to invest in the marriage, the health, the faith, the friendship, is before the neglect has done serious damage. Whatever has been entrusted to your care is worthy of the attention that will keep it in good repair. Don't wait for the collapse. Maintain now. The discipline of small, consistent investment is always less costly than the crisis management of significant, accumulated neglect. Lesson 39. Money is a useful tool, but a terrible foundation. Ecclesiastes 10:19 offers one of the most pragmatically honest observations in the book. A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things. Read without context. This might sound like an endorsement of materialism, like Solomon is saying that money solves everything, and therefore everything comes down to money. But that is not what is being said. Solomon is acknowledging something real and true. Money has practical utility. In a material world, material resources answer a great many practical questions. The feast requires provision. The celebration requires resources. Needs require means. Solomon is not naive about this, and he doesn't pretend otherwise. But look at what money cannot answer. It cannot answer whether you are loved. It cannot answer whether your life has meaning. It cannot answer what happens after you die. It cannot answer the question of whether you are forgiven. It cannot answer the desperate longing of the human spirit for something that is real and lasting and true. It cannot tell you who you are or why you matter. It cannot quiet the 2 a.m. anxiety that tells you something in your life is deeply wrong. The answers to those questions are not purchased. They are received from the God who made you, who knows you, who loves you, and who offers you, at no cost to you but at infinite cost to himself, the answer that money will never be able to provide. Use money wisely. Provide for your needs. Be generous. Steward what God has given you, but never, not for a single moment, make it the thing your security rests on. Build your life on the one who makes money a possibility, not on the money itself. The God who is your foundation cannot be lost in a market crash, cannot be stolen in a robbery, and does not depreciate over time. Lesson 40. Fear God and keep his commandments. This is everything for everyone at every stage of life. We have arrived. After 40 lessons, after all the wrestling and the honesty and the sitting with the hard questions that Ecclesiastes refuses to rush past, we arrive here. Ecclesiastes 12:13-14, the conclusion of the whole matter, the verdict delivered by one of the wisest men who ever lived after the most exhaustive experiment in the history of human seeking. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. This is not a cop-out. This is not Solomon throwing up his hands and retreating to religious platitude because he couldn't find a better answer. This is the conclusion of a man who genuinely tried everything else and found that nothing else held. This is the verdict arrived at after wisdom and pleasure and wealth and work and achievement and observation of injustice, and sitting with the limits of human knowledge and confronting the reality of death. After all of that, this is what remains standing. Fear God. Keep his commandments. This is everything. Let's be careful about what the fear of God actually means, because it is widely misunderstood. It is not terror. It is not the cowering dread of a slave before an unpredictable master. The fear of God is reverence. It is the posture of a creature who has genuinely reckoned with the infinite distance between themselves and the Creator. Not in terror, but in awe, in humility, in the settled acknowledgement that God is God and you are not, and that this distinction is not a threat, but a relief. When you truly fear God in this sense, you are released from the impossible burden of trying to be God. You are freed from the exhausting project of being the most important thing in your own universe. You are liberated into the far more livable position of a beloved creature held in the hands of a wise and faithful Creator. That posture changes everything. It changes how you handle success. You hold it lightly, knowing who gave it. It changes how you bear failure. You trust the one who is not finished with you. It changes how you treat others. You see them as creatures of the same God who made you. It changes how you face injustice. You trust the judge who sees what you cannot. It changes how you approach your own death. You know that what returns to God will be received by him, and to keep his commandments is to make that reverence visible. not through performance, not through religious ritual done for show, not through the exhausted compliance of someone who obeys because they fear punishment, but through the wholehearted, love-motivated, grace-empowered response of a person who has been found and saved and indwelt by the God who gave the commandments and who now genuinely wants, to live in a way that honors him. Obedience is not the mechanism of salvation. It is the evidence of it. It is what the life of someone who actually knows God looks like from the outside. Fear God. Keep his commandments. This is the whole duty of man, not a part of it. Not an important component of a more complex program, the whole thing. And when you land here, truly, deeply, humbly, with your whole life oriented around this reality, you discover that the question that opened this entire book, the question of whether anything matters, finally has an answer. Everything matters because you are doing it before the God who sees everything, who values everything offered to him in faithfulness, and who will, at the last, bring every work into the light of his perfect and loving judgment. That is enough. When life makes no sense, when the ground shifts and the questions have no easy answers, and the world seems to be spinning without an axis, this is enough. Not because it makes the confusion disappear, not because it removes the pain or explains the injustice or resolves every mystery, but because it gives you something to stand on that is more solid than circumstances, more durable than feelings, more permanent than any of the things that have ever let you down. The fear of God is the ground beneath your feet when everything else gives way, and it is a ground that has never, not once in all of human history, failed the person who stood on it. Stand here, stay here, and let everything else be built on this. If this journey through the 40 lessons of Ecclesiastes has stirred something in you today, if even one of these truths landed in a place that needed it, if something in you feels a little more settled, a little more grounded, a little more anchored than it did when you pressed play, then I want to ask something of you before you go. And I want to ask it genuinely and warmly, because I mean every word of it. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Not because subscriptions are a metric we're chasing, but because subscribing is how you tell the algorithm that this kind of content matters to you. And that signal is what makes it possible for more people who are searching for exactly this kind of depth to find it. Every time you subscribe, you are not just supporting this channel, you are helping someone else find what you found here. So please, subscribe. Do it now, before you navigate away and forget. It takes 3 seconds and it matters more than you might realize. If this video moved you, if it taught you something, if it gave you something solid to hold on to, please share it. Think of one person right now, just one, who is in a hard season. Someone who is confused or hurting or searching for ground beneath their feet. Send this video to them. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to write a long message. Just send it and say, I thought of you. You may never know what that act of generosity does in their life, but I believe that the right word, at the right moment, sent by the right person, can change everything. Like the video while you're at it. It helps more people find this content when they need it most, and turn on your notifications so you never miss what's coming next. We have more powerful, honest, deep studies of God's Word coming to this channel, and you do not want to miss what's ahead. We are going deeper into Scripture together, and the best of what this channel has to offer is still in front of us. To every single person who made it to the end of this study, in America, in the United Kingdom, in every nation represented in this global community, I want to close with this. You are not alone in the questions. You are not the first person to feel that life makes no sense. Solomon felt it. The Psalms are full of people who felt it. The whole cloud of witnesses that surrounds us is made up of people who walked through seasons of deep confusion and deep pain, and who found in the middle of all of it that the God who made them was still there, still faithful, still working, even when he was silent, even when he was invisible, even when the evidence available to human senses seemed to argue against his goodness. He is still there. He is still faithful. He is still working in your life right now in ways you may not be able to see, toward purposes that are larger and more beautiful than you currently have the vantage point to appreciate. Trust him, fear him with the reverence of a loved child. Keep walking in his ways. And when life makes no sense, especially when life makes no sense, let this word be the ground beneath your feet. May God's peace guard your heart and your mind today. May his wisdom be a lamp to your path. May his faithfulness be the thing you rest in when everything else feels uncertain. And may you find in the 40 lessons of Ecclesiastes, in the honest, hard-won, spirit-breathed wisdom of a man who tried everything else first, exactly what your soul was looking for. God bless you. I'll see you in the next video.